This is the answer to the study guide for Chapter 10, Section 5, Chapter 10, Section 6. So let's take a look at our first problem here. So it says that calculator displays this expression, write this number in standard form. So the e represents the exponents. And so this is the same thing as saying 4.02 times 10 to the 9th power. So basically I'm moving the decimal over 9 spaces. So that's 2 spaces to get to the other side of the 2. But then I'm out of spaces, so I have to add zeros. So I'm going to add 7 zeros. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 zeros to add after the 2. And then here's the number, 4,020,000,000 is that number there in standard form. So this one is a negative exponent, so it means I move the decimal the other direction. And so it started here between the 1 and the 6, and that means 8 spaces to the left. So 1 space to get to the other side of the 1, and then 7 zeros I need to add. So there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then the decimal point. And so that would be our number. So on this one, we have to tell whether the numbers are in scientific notation. So what you're going to do is look at the multiplier. And the multiplier needs to be between 1 and 10. So 1 and 10 to be in scientific notation. So that's not. That's smaller. So we would say no. The multiplier is less than 1. And so moving on to the next one, here the multiplier is greater than 10, so this is another no. No, the multiplier is greater than or equal to 10. And so it can't be greater than 10, it can't even equal 10. This one is in scientific notation because the multiplier is, and I'm going to use notation here. Well, actually, I'll just go ahead and write it out. The multiplier is less or greater than or equal to 1 and less than 10. So it has to be a number that is either 1 or bigger but less than 10 is the main thing for scientific notation. Here it says the flea consumes 1.4 times 10 to the negative 5th liters of blood each day. So if I write that out in standard form, I would write 4 zeros and then the 1 and the 4. And then I'm going to go ahead and multiply that by 100 because this cat has 100 fleas on it. So when I do that, basically I'm taking the 1 and multiplying it by 14 and adding 2 zeros to the end of the number. And then I'll go ahead and move the decimal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 and 6 spaces. I add 2 zeros to the end of the number to make that work. Well, that's for the 100 fleas in a day, but we have to do this for a week. How many liters of blood are consumed in a week? So I need to multiply by 7. So 7 times 4, I'll write down these zeros here for now, 7 times 0 and 7 times 0. 7 times 4 is 28. 7 times 1 plus 2 makes 9. And then I have to move the decimal 6 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's 4 spaces there. Adding 2 zeros, we'll put the decimal point right there. So that means that we have 0.0098 liters of blood was consumed in a week. Let's take a look at the next 3 problems. On this one it says write the number in scientific notation. So we want the decimal point to move between the 2 and the 0. And then I need to count the spaces I move the decimal. So times 10 to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces. So it's going to be a negative 5 because it's a smaller number. On this one, we have to have the decimal between the 5 and the 2. And we need to write down all the significant digits, including the 0 and the 1. And so now I write down times 10 to how many spaces I move the decimal. So it always starts at the end of the number if you don't see it, and that is 3, 6, and 2 more makes 8. So 8 zeros, or 8 spaces I move the decimal. You're supposed to order from least to greatest and then explain our reasoning. So my reasoning is I look at the exponents first. And so I'm going to write down 9.65 times 10 to the 11th as the smallest number because it has the smallest exponent. 5.76 times 10 to the 12th is the next one, and the largest one is 1.2 times 10 to the 13th. So what I do is my reasoning is I compare exponents first. Compare exponents, and whichever one is the smallest one will be the smallest number. Then compare multipliers. So if the exponents are the same, then you have to look at the multipliers to see which of the multipliers is bigger. So in the next one it says the total power for the space shuttle during launch is the sum of the power of the solid rocket boosters and the main engine. The power of the solid rocket boosters is this right here. That's these boosters right here. And the main engine right here is, well, we don't know. We're trying to find that out. They're asking what is. So here it says the total power. So we're given the total power, so we're going to write that in standard form. So I rewrite those numbers. That's 3 spaces. I move the decimal, but I got to move a 10 altogether, so I have to add 7 zeros. So there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then I'll rewrite this number. Now the common mistake I see is people start with the 9 right here, but that would be in the wrong place value. So I've got to start with the ones place and line up those decimals, or line up those place values. And so I'm going to write down 6 zeros, and that gets me all the way to this point. And then I have the 0, 5, 7, and the 9. So 0, 5, 7, and the 9. Now I'm ready to do the subtraction. So I have to subtract, and when I do that I get to write down all these zeros, and then right here is where it gets interesting. I have to actually borrow a bunch of times. Change the 1 to a 0, the 11 here changes to a 10, 17 to a 16, and then I can do the subtraction. So I get a 9, a 9, and a 1. So I can go ahead and add in the 0 or the commas, and this is in watts. So is what the power is represented in. So I can write it in the standard form like that, or 1.99 times 10 to the 9th watts. So either one will end up working out there. So let's take a look at the next 3 problems. Here it says we're going to graph this using intercepts. So I'm going to set y equal to 0, and when I do that I'm left with x equals -2. So this point is -2 comma 0 because I put 0 in place of y. And so I go over 2 spaces to the left and put a dot. And then for this next one I cover up the x term. So I'm setting that equal to 0, and I'm left with -2y equals 2, or -2 that is. So I divide by -2, and I'm left with y equals 1. So I go over 1 space in the y direction, or up 1 space in the y, because over 0 in the x, because I put 0 in for x, 1 up in the y. And then I draw a line between those points. So on the next one, though, it's asking for what is the temperature. We're supposed to solve for K when the temperature is 59 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're putting the 59 in place of F right here, and we're going to use order of operation. So 5/9 times by 59 minus 32, and then plus the 273.15. So I go ahead and do that subtraction. So I have 5/9 times by, and then when I subtract these two numbers, I end up getting 27. And then I have to add on that 273.15. So all I'm doing is multiplying 5/9, but I see some canceling that occurs. 9 goes into 27 3 times. And then I multiply across, and that gives me 15. So all I have to do is add 15 to 273 and 1500, and I get my answer. So that makes 288 and 1500ths Kelvin. So there's my answer. Let's take a look at the last one. It says the vertices of this figure are given, so let's go ahead and plot them. -5 and up 3 spaces, and that's A. And then -2 and up 3 spaces, and there's B. And then I go over 2 spaces and just up 1 space, and there's C. And then over 5 spaces, up 1 space, and that is D. So I'll draw the lines between the points. It's a little rectangle. So it says reflect over the y-axis and then dilate with respect to the origin with a scale factor of 2. So over the y-axis means I go over this y-axis is vertical. So I count the spaces to the y-axis, and then I go the same number of spaces on the other side, and that's going to be B prime. And so over here, same thing. 2 spaces over to the y-axis, 2 spaces on the other side. That's C prime. And then D is going to be 5 spaces over. Since it was 5 spaces to the left, I got to go 5 to the right. That's D prime. And then A prime is going to be right up here. 5 spaces from the line of reflection, so 5 spaces to the other side. So then it says we're supposed to dilate with a scale factor of 2. So you got to take these points here and double them. So I'm doubling 2 and doubling 3 for the B term. So if I double 2, I get 4. If I double 3, I end up getting 6. So I end up having this is my B double prime. And so I'm getting that because, again, if I had B prime was 2, 3. And so I'm doubling both of these points. Double 3, double 2. And that gives me a B prime, double prime of, we get 4, 6. And then I'll go on to my A prime. A prime was 5, 3. So I'm doubling these points. So when I double them, A double prime is going to end up being 10, 6. So over 10 up 6 spaces, and that is A double prime. C prime was 2, 1. Then I'm doubling these points, so timesing it by 2, and that gives me 4, 2. So over 4 spaces up 2 puts me right here, and that's going to be C double prime. And then D prime was 5, 1. And so when I double these values, double both the X term, I get 10, Y term, I get 2. And so that's going to put this point right here, and that's going to be D double prime. So you can see that is the new rectangle. So these are the answers here. It asks for what the coordinates are. Make sure you write down what those coordinates are. And so this was D double prime here. So those are the types of problems you're going to see on tonight's homework and the quiz tomorrow. Good luck.